Hi, Kim. Thanks for doing this interview.
Thanks for having me.
So, I know that you have a unique story to share, and this blog is meant to give a chance for us to hear stories about folks who started their careers in dispute resolution right out of either law school, graduate school, or just very early on in their careers. So, I want to just open it with tell us a little bit about when you started in dispute resolution and what motivated you to start in dispute resolution instead of some other field.
I went to law school because I had 7 kids at home and I had a lot of conflict and with other parents. There was a blended family, and I thought it would just be a nice thing to do. And I had no idea about anything about the culture. I just lived 35 miles away, and uh, it was a good idea. And so I got there, and I was just really shocked. I kept looking for a way to belong. So I started an organization for parents at law school. And I got involved with the ACLU student chapter that was just beginning. There was a group of us that were starting that, and I thought that will give me some people to belong with. And I didn't feel like I belonged, and then I started getting attacked because I actually, with 7 kids at home and running a business and working full time, and don't tell the ABA, I was actually working full time as a law student. You know, I was doing a lot, and a student came to me, a fellow student, and said, "You're doing too much,
Mm.
and we don't like it, so we're reporting you to the IRS for an audit." And I'm incredulous. It's like I don't even know this guy. I mean, he's in one of my classes, and somehow I'm in competition with him. It really took me a long time to figure out that we were in competition with each other, and that he wasn't just being mean. And so I decided I was never going to be a lawyer. I absolutely was never going to be a lawyer. And so I graduated. I got a job running a domestic violence program and doing basically community organizing around that issue. And I didn't practice for a few years. And I was living in North Carolina, and there was a course in Atlanta, Georgia, called the Wisdom Course, and it drew people from all over the country. And I went to that course, and I was in the back of the room, not really paying much attention, when a guy stood up and he said, "My name is Forrest Baird. I'm from Chicago, and I practice law." And so that got my attention, and he said, "It is my goal at the end of every divorce that my client can be friends with the person that they're divorcing, that they can co-parent, and I make sure that I grant dignity and respect to everybody." And I said, "Oh my gosh, that I can do." It was like one of those cartoon moments where everything goes from black and white to color, and the birds and the butterflies, and everything becomes different. So I had passed 2 state bars by then, but I was living in a state where I wasn't a member of the bar. And so I went and immediately applied and took the bar, and I hung my shingle because when you're a woman in your 30s and you have a big family, you're not going to find a job. I actually think there are probably exceptions to that rule, but I'm pretty unemployable. And so I hung my shingle, and I was going to be a holistic lawyer. And I shared office space with a colleague who had a similar bent, and then I started my own office within the first little while, and I kept running into that adversarial system that I had been avoiding. I often described it like I was hitting the courthouse wall. Literally, sometimes it felt like. And so people would come to me and they would say they wanted to fight and all this kind of stuff, and then I would have a different kind of conversation with them about what their real goals were. And so at the beginning, I did some trials, but and I'm actually not a bad trial lawyer. I had in that win-lose category, I only had one loss ever in my trial work. Um, and uh, but I saw what it was doing to my clients, and so when I won, I won, my client won a particular case. uh, she said to me that she would never ever go to trial again if she had to give up her children. That it was such a horrible experience. She would never go to trial again. And I realized that I wasn't going to take clients to trial anymore. And so I'd been exploring, like, what is it that Forrest Baird does, and he was part of the collaborative law community. And so I learned about that, and I looked up Stu Webb, and literally one day somebody walked into my office, and she was a mediator from Florida, and mediation was brand new. This was in the mid-'90s. She was a mediator from Florida, and she wanted to find some place to work, and she was a school counselor, and with a mediation background. I thought, oh, this is really nice. And so I said, well, I'm not sure how we can work together, but I want to work with you. And so she became part of my sort of stable. And then I had to write to the state bar and say, how can I be a lawyer with a mediator in my office? And a friend of mine was in social work school, and she wanted to throw in with me, and I had another lawyer. And eventually, by the third year of practice or so, I had another lawyer, I had a paralegal, I had a legal assistant, I had a mediator, and I had a social worker in my office. And the ABA had, or the North Carolina bar had a policy against a multidisciplinary practice at that point. So I wrote a request for an opinion, and they said, no, you can't do that, and this is why. And so then I fixed the why, and then I wrote back again, and then they gave me another why. And I think it was the third time, and they had published opinions that have now completely disappeared. But one of the things they required at that time was that everybody who was having mediation, they were required to have counsel in addition to a separate counsel in addition to mediation. And so that's definitely gone away now. But it was often really discouraging, and I thought that I would give up, except that I had that vision. It's like it was easy to say I wasn't going to practice law when I didn't think there was another way, but once I knew there was another way, I just started doing it. And so, it's a long story about how I did that, and I had interns from the law school and all that, and then I was married to a man who got a job in Portland, Oregon, and so I moved from North Carolina to Oregon, and I said, now what do I do? Like, I've been doing really exciting, cutting-edge work in North Carolina, where I was inventing new ways and learning about all of these ways of practicing law. And now what do I do? And I decided that I would share that with other people. So the web was pretty new at that point. It's hard to imagine that it was pretty new 15 years ago. But 15 years ago, there weren't very many websites out there. And my sister taught website design, so she taught me how to put up a website. And I had one of the first websites in North Carolina for lawyers. And I noticed a lot of people wrote and were asking questions, and so I decided to create a website that would inform lawyers about all these different models. And I created the Renaissance Lawyer website, and that eventually grew into an organization. And a group of 100 founders came together and had a conference, and the movement was born. I would say this is because one of the things I've found about this movement is that there were a lot of people who invented it, and they invented it because they were like me. They saw that it didn't work, but they didn't know there was something else, or and they invented it. They invented it for themselves, or they found somebody who was a mentor. And so I probably know 15 people who literally invented holistic law. They didn't know there was anything like that, and they invented their own version of it. And so I see that that's what's happened with bringing restorative justice and collaborative law and therapeutic jurisprudence, is that people who are very innovative, creative, and courageous have said, I'm going to do it a different way. So over the years, it's become my job to connect those people. I also study systems change, and systems change is about bringing together the innovators, or for me, that's the model I use, is about bringing together the innovators so that they can cross-pollinate.
Well,
And
Kim, can you talk a little bit about, I mean, because I feel like, right, the idea of being entrepreneurial and being confident and getting out there and trying something new and starting something is a theme that we're hearing a lot on this blog and that you're bringing up as well. And I'm just curious what you think about this idea that this next generation of ADR professionals can or cannot start younger than maybe our previous generation, that we don't have to wait for 20 years and react to a field, but we can actually start from the point of view of when you're talking about holistic law and collaborative law and therapeutic jurisprudence, but dispute resolution in general. Do you think that's possible, or do you think that it needs to be more of a response to a previous career?
I absolutely think it's possible. And one of the reasons is the metaphor I like to use is the Trailblazer metaphor. So there's been this jungle out there, and the Trailblazers, who started back in the 80s, and some of them even in restorative justice in the 70s, those people have already cleared the path. So we've been out there with our machetes clearing the path. So it was a lot harder in the 70s and 80s and 90s to do this stuff. I mean, I described what I had to do with the bar to even have a mediator in my office. The mediation was so brand new that I had to get an opinion from the ethics committee to even do it. And now, of course, mediation, there are tens of thousands of mediation programs around the world. And so it's not so weird. It's still not mainstream for the public. The public doesn't think I'm going to go get somebody who makes peas. They think I'm going to get somebody who's going to help me fight. And so we have to have those conversations and get clear with people what they really want and what are their real values. And it's a different skill set than what we're being taught in law school, but it's one you can learn, and you can make a lot of mistakes if your being is right. You don't have to have everything perfect. You can, but if your intentions are good and your heart's in the right place, you can bring that skill set that you have learned in law school and then add to it. So I call, or actually there was a whole committee of us that got together of 30 people who named the Integrative Law movement. We aligned together that we would call it Integrative Law. And so if an integrative law practitioner is not someone who is not a lawyer, integrative law is law plus. It's all of those great skills, the analytical skills and the knowledge that you get from law school, and then you put a whole new skill set on top of it that is about empathy and compassion and connecting and looking at the bigger picture and actually working with what is it that the client wants? What is it that the client wants for the long term? So one of the most sort of groundbreaking questions I kind of came upon almost accidentally was I would ask my family law clients what they wanted their relationship to be with their ex in 5 years, and 5 years was enough time that they could really disconnect from I want to kill him, or I want her to suffer, or whatever emotional experience they were having, and they could disconnect from that, and they could say, I really want us to create a good relationship. And I would have them create a vision for themselves about what it looked like. So I had one couple who wanted to dance at their daughter's wedding, and that was not even 5 years away. That was a planned event. And I had a client who said, when little Billy is playing basketball, I want him to be able to make a goal and look to the bleachers and see mom and dad sitting together. And so when you create that broader picture for your client. Ask them what they really want. The door wanting to fight, but that other vision is much stronger than that. And then you have to have the skills to help them find how to deal with the emotions that are going to come up. And it may not be that you help them, but that you help them find the right people and you help them find a team. So yeah, it can be done, and I'm excited when I see some of the things that people are creating. A woman named Janelle Orsi invented sharing law right out of law school, and she has just revolutionized the whole area of law around how do we live in the sharing economy, how do we what kind of issues are there if you want to share a car, for example. And now we have Uber car and Airbnb and all of that, which are sort of the capitalistic expressions of what's going on in communities. And Janelle saw that, and she said, well, how do we live together and be a community? And she invented a whole area of law. She's been in magazines, and she's traveled around the world. And I think she's in her 30s now. But she did it right out of law school. And so young people can make a huge difference, and they and not boxed in. These new grads.
I would like to ask you to focus on that for a second then, because I think that for a lot of folks, they're saying, I went to law school and it's just not what I wanted to do, so I went into dispute resolution. And I hear you describing something much more inclusive. So go to law school, you can be an attorney that practices more holistically, or that takes into consideration, obviously, some of the dispute resolution principles. What do you think somebody needs if they want to do something a little bit different right out of law school, whether it be holistic law, collaborative law, sharing law, or mediation? What advice would you give that young person just graduating?
I'm writing a book for that young person now, so it's not going to fit into this. The ABA asked me to write a book. As I wrote the first book called Lawyers as Peacemakers. I can recommend that without any concern that I'm promoting myself, because I don't make any money from it. I make so little, it's pocket change. And so Lawyers as Peacemakers gives the overview and a lot of those ideas. And then I'm writing the second book, which is called Integrative Law, at least tentatively. But I think the short answer is to find somebody who holds that vision. And so once you've created the vision, then you can go toward it, and you need a community to give you courage. Mm-hmm. And so that's been my work, is in creating those communities where people can come together and they can know they're not crazy and they're not just weird. Mm-hmm. And so they can get together and share ideas and share experience. And they're not alone anymore. So since 1999, when I started connecting people, the thing I've heard more often than not is, I thought I was alone. And so my work, I've been traveling around the world for 7 years, connecting lawyers who thought they were alone. And I want to give them the experience that Forrest Baird gave me.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. Helping create that community so they can feel part of the movement and see that they're not alone. Well, yeah. I know that we're wrapping up. We're running out of time for the interview, but I wanted to give you a chance to share anything else that you'd like others to hear about starting a career in dispute resolution early in their professional career.
Well, just to say it really clearly, you're not alone. That this really is the forefront of what's next. The ABA in 2013 actually published an article on integrative law, and they said, is this the next huge wave? That was the headline. Is integrative law the next huge wave? And I would say, yes, it is. And you're not in a box that says you have to do it a certain way. You can actually bring everything you are. I mean, if the environment is something that really is passion for you, well, there are people who are doing earth law, and they're bringing their skills to that. And if it's sharing, you can bring your skills to that. You can do conscious contracts and work in transactional law. Bring everything you are and then add your skills to it, and then create how you want to express that in the world.
That's beautiful. I think that's a great message for us to end on, Kim. I want to say thanks so much for taking the time to share your thoughts and your story with us.
Thanks. It's fun.
It's inspiring.